Hey everybody! Since Maggie was a hit and brought some smiles to your face last time, I thought I would introduce one of our other cats. This is Milo. He is the biggest piece of shit that we have in the family, but he's being good right now. He's the one male cat. He and I are the males in the house. We have five other females in the house. Um, Two humans and four cats. So it's a crowded home, but a happy home. So say goodbye, Milo. Yeah, good boy. Here you go. He's a big one too. Now I'm covered in Milo detritus. Okay. Once they're out, we'll start again. So today, thank you so much. So today, for this lecture, I wanted to do something slightly different, but related. I've done a lecture like this before with other classes, but it's always been sort of a break in the course material. But for this class, it's actually not. It actually has a clear relevance to the material. So no housekeeping to do, so I'm just going to go into the lecture, and then when I'm done, I'm done. And I think that's probably going to be all the lecturing you get for the week. So your other journals can just pertain to, your first journal can pertain to the readings for Tuesday, and your second journal can either pertain to this lecture or to the readings for Thursday. Simple enough. So I'll jump right into it. Every semester, I get emails from students saying things like, I'm really sorry I haven't done X assignment, I'm having a really hard week, or my grandmother died, or I've been sick, I've had the flu or something. And every teacher gets those emails, but not all of us take them seriously. Not all of the teachers take them seriously. I mean, it's kind of a running joke among teachers that, like, during finals week is the most dangerous time of the year for grandparents because they just drop like flies near finals week. And I think that's a pretty funny joke, but the reality is not very funny because because of my own personal experience, being a student, being on the other side of the teaching world, know that, or at least suspect that what's actually going on when students say, my grandmother died, or I have the flu, is not, as some teachers suspect, the student was just out drinking late the night before and didn't do their work, or they've been playing too much Xbox or something. I think a lot of times much more serious things are going on in my students' lives, in every student's life. And that's changed how I relate to my own students. And as some of you know, you've emailed me and said, hey, I'm behind on this assignment. I'm just having a really rough semester or first half of the semester. Can you give me an extension? And my policy for the last several years has been always to say yes, even when I suspect a student is lying to me. If you email me and say that your grandmother died right before paper is due, there's a part of me that thinks maybe your grandmother didn't really die. But that part of me thinks now that if you email me with something that sounds like a lie, it's really because something much more serious is going on, and you just don't think it's any of my business to tell me your personal life. And so you tell me a lie, and the problem is students just aren't very good liars. Teachers are great liars. Like, we've had way more practice than you have, but students are not. But anyway, so the reason I suspect that there's a lot more serious things going on underneath of, like, the face of my students that I see, which is normally in the classroom, and you all seem fairly put together and everything's fine, you're smiling, and you do the same thing online, you try to show up and be present and present yourself to me in a sort of put together way. You want people to have that impression of you. But I suspect that it's not always the case behind the scenes. And the reason I suspect that, there's a few. One is that I was a student not all that long ago, and my life was a mess. Another reason is that for whatever reason, my students of the past decade have decided that they want to open up to me about their personal life, and I'm always here for that if you want. But I never want my students to feel like I want them to tell me their personal things, like, or that they need to tell me their personal things in order to get extensions or whatever it is. But I've had a lot of students just sort of ask if they could open up to me, and always, of course, you can. And it just amazes me the amount of, I mean, for a lack of a better word, the amount of shit that you have to put up with in your life. And I think that's, to one degree or another, true for every student, that college is a struggle. And the reason I want to talk about that today is because I want to talk about the role caring for your own mental health plays in doing a good job in taking care of others. All of you are in this class because you have some desire to work in a field or to be a sort of person where you take care of other people, where you help those who are not in good positions, who have health problems or mental health problems, people who are going to be in hospitals or whatever. And if you want to take care of those people, you don't just have an obligation to them, you have an obligation to yourself, or maybe you have an obligation to them regarding yourself, regarding your own health. You can't do a good job taking care of other people if you yourself are being neglected. And so I want you to take that general topic as the nature of the sort of framework for the lecture I'm giving today. And it's going to be a somewhat personal lecture because I'm going to talk about my own experience. There's really no other way to talk about mental health than to talk about it in real terms, in terms of people's lives, sort of in the same way there's no way to talk about ethical medical ethics without using case studies. It's just sort of going to be the case study for this topic. So I was given I was part of a group of people that were invited to a very well-known university here in America because I was one of the three that were up for a job. I didn't get this job, but I was one of the final three applicants, and so they fly you up to this beautiful university and they give you a tour. This is one of those universities where the students are always like thought of as just really having it together, and it's the best students that are going to go there, and they're just top of everything. They've got their shit together. And I was told during my during the tours that they're giving me of the campus that they average one student death a week, and that's actually normal, about the norm for large prestigious universities like that, about one student death a week and most of them are suicides. And I looked into the statistics, and it turns out that statistically that's about true. It's not true for really small colleges because you don't have as many students, but if you scaled up the number of deaths that they have per year to the size of a very large university like this one, you would find about the same. Which is just more evidence that universities are a really hard time. The reason I think I need to talk to you about this is because unlike cancer or schizophrenia or COVID-19, which everybody knows are a really hard time to get through, college is usually not acknowledged to be a really difficult time. As a matter of fact, a lot of people think of college students as just having the most carefree time of their life and the easiest years of their life or whatever. You've probably had somebody at some point say, like, you know, when you get out into the real world, as if college isn't the real world. It's going to be a lot harder. And it's just not true. The nature of the place that you're in is almost never acknowledged to you. And the reason is the same reason sometimes we're tempted not to tell like very, very old people that they have cancer. It just doesn't seem like it do them any good. It seems like it just freak them out. And maybe being ignorant and just trying their hardest and going through it is better. I don't think that's true for college students. I think instead, if we don't acknowledge the really difficult aspects of your position in the world and in your own life, that what it does is it creates this sort of hallucinatory dual reality where the reality that you're pretending you're in is like really nice and fun and great and easy and carefree, but then the reality that you're actually in is very, very different, and you're not allowed to acknowledge that. That's unhealthy. Any sort of like, asking people to play a part like that with their whole life is really unhealthy. So, to get this lecture further off the ground, I just want to characterize college in the way I see it. And maybe that'll help emphasize or make it clear the degree to which you really do have an obligation to manage your own mental health as you go through this. And and it'll give you the idea that you really do have something to manage. So when you're in college, there's a bunch of things you're trying to manage. You are trying to figure out who you are because you just left high school a year or two ago, and you want to be a different person. You sort of want to reinvent yourself. You're not around all the same people that you were for the past 4 or 8 years, and you're maturing. You've got new interests. There are things you like about yourself and don't like about yourself. There's things you want to be and do. So you're trying to reinvent your own identity, or at least solidify your own identity. Figure out who you are, what your interests are, what your personality is like, who you fit in with. That's something adults generally don't have to do. You're also trying to figure out money for the first time. You are sort of responsible for your own cash, and you're going to screw that up at some point. And you might be lucky enough to have parents who can cover for you, but some of you aren't that lucky. And when you screw up, it really matters. You're trying to figure out your social life, who you are cool hanging out with, who you aren't. You're trying to figure out your sex life. You're now sort of free to do that without anybody watching over you, or at least not as many people watching over you and maybe judging you for it. You might be figuring out your sexuality in a way that you've never been able to before. And that is in itself it can take over your whole mental life. If an adult had to figure that out, it could consume their whole mental life. But you don't just do that one thing. You're trying to figure all these other things out. You might be experimenting with drugs for the first time, and that can be exciting and scary and dangerous, but you're engaging in behavior that has some degree of risk and some degree of payoff, and you're trying to figure out whether the risks are worth it. That can also help you figure out who you are. You're trying to choose what your career is. That's an impossible choice, really, because you haven't experienced any of these careers, so it's like choosing which hole to stick your hand in when you don't know what's in any of the holes. You just know what color the box is painted or something. So that's a really confusing challenge that you're up against. You're also trying to figure out things like physics and chemistry and non-discrete mathematics and Greek literature and foreign language and hospitality courses. Those aren't things that anybody else is trying to figure out all at once. You're trying to figure out your relationships, your emotional relationships with other people, your friends. You're trying to handle loneliness, this sort of crushing loneliness that can sometimes come even when you're in a crowd, room full of people. You are for the first time engaging in politics at a sort of adult citizen level, and you're trying to figure out your own political identity and your political beliefs. And right now is an incredibly fraught and difficult time to be doing that. You might be working for the first time, managing a job and school. You're trying to find some balance between those things. You're trying to figure out how to manage your time, which if you've never been taught how to do that, it's extremely complicated and difficult to do. You're trying to build the self-control that is needed in order to manage all these things and to, not choose to have fun over choosing to do something boring and difficult like studying. You're trying to live with other people who are strangers or semi-strangers to you, and you're trying to be peaceful about it and cool, and they might be driving you crazy, or you might be driving them crazy and not knowing why. You have fear of missing out of all the things that are going on around you, and there's no way you can do them all. And you're taking 18 hours of classes. That's just college. And then there's whatever your personal stuff is. Like, that's college. That's your life. And also the life of everyone that you're situated with. And if it was just you around a bunch of people who had very stable social and economic existences, you could maybe rely on them for some sense of normalcy or stability. But everybody is in this super unstable, chaotic place in life altogether. And that makes for it's like chaos on chaos on chaos. And everybody has that, and then they have their own personal shit that they have to deal with. When I was in college, I was dealing with all those things. And my personal shit was that my mother is a drug addict. And my relationship with my father was very bad. Oh no, our power just went out. Huh. Pause for a second. Hey, could you flip the breaker? Thanks. There we go. Sorry. Oh, did it again. Jesus Christ. It did it again. Okay, we'll see. Sorry about that. We have a fuse that just flips for some reason sometimes. It's an old house. So my shit was that, and my mother was a drug addict. And I don't know if you've ever had a relationship with an addict, but it's extremely tiring, emotionally and financially, and it's just chaos. And my relationship was very bad. He had been in prison for a while, and I had something to do with his imprisonment, and that probably hurt our relationship in ways that we won't ever recover from. And so when you get into adulthood, most adults who have like a 40-hour-a-week job and just kids and a pet and whatever, they have their own things that they're dealing with, no doubt. But they don't have nearly this level of chaos and difficulty surrounding them. So the place you're in already, just as a college student, without your own individual challenges in life, that place that you're in is really unusually challenging. It is unusually chaotic. To make that a little more clear, think about, well, have you ever had the feeling that like you're just not made to do all this stuff? Like, I don't know how some people do all this and, you know, get straight A's and are having lots of fun and seem like they're okay, but I don't know, I can't do it. That's not a crazy thought. You are a certain sort of animal that was evolved to live in a certain set of conditions and to do a certain set of things. Humans evolved to be hunter-gatherers or nomads that lived in small village-like communities. You were supposed to wake up every day, and your main challenges were to make sure that you had shelter, to make sure that you and your people had food, and to make sure that you were safe from any environmental threats. And if you had those three things, which for most groups was not a huge challenge, most people had those three things down pretty securely. If you had those three things, you were done for the day. That's all you had to do. And you were free with the rest of your time to spend it with friends and family and to play. And certainly a lot of work was involved, especially if you're an agrarian culture. But even as hard as farmers work, they only work for like 4 months out of the year, up to harvest time. And then the rest of the year, there's not much to do. That's the life that human beings evolved to have. That's radically different from the life that you're expected to live now. The difference is like taking a human as they evolved and putting them into this world, in this life. It's sort of like taking a silverback gorilla and putting it on a roller coaster. And then the gorilla thinking, why am I freaking out? Why can't I handle all this? You're not built to handle things like this. This is not the natural environment that you're in. It has all sorts of psychological effects. I mean, humans were made to spend most of their time outside in a natural environment and to have some sort of psychological relationship with nature. So we don't know exactly, oh my God, damn it. Maybe she just knows that the breaker has flipped. Anyway, I'm just going to continue this lecture in the dark. So, now I've lost my train of thought. Let me pause.